Through a Scottish Prism, the programme that is unapologetically pro-Scottish independence and anti-Westminster rule. Everything we say here is viewed through a Scottish Prism. Brought to you by Barhead Boy.
And welcome back to Through a Scottish Prism. Nice to be with you again. Been a week since our last wee chat. And as you see there, we have a new sponsor for our show, Flagship Media. And I want to thank them, and I want to thank you, our recent crowdfunders, to get stuff for equipment. It's all pouring in now, thanks to Flagship Media and your good selves. We're ready to go for our road shows, and techies will be playing with the kit soon, and we'll be up for road shows. So if you'd like us to come to your LACU, your branch, your whatever, your yes group, anything, and do a wee live Prism for you, we're now able to do it. So just you find a venue, we'll turn up, and we'll do the show. So let us know. We've certainly got one already planned for the weekend of conference in Glasgow. Hopefully we'll have more before then. And of course, I've got to quickly remind you as well, don't forget next week we've got the Air March for All Under One banner. And personally I'll be there. I hope to see a lot of you there. I'll be at the see you all at the Through Scottish Prism stall. But where we are today, believe it or not, you can see the surroundings are not the same. I am in that famous place of Mr. Boswell in the Côte de Brig. I turned up for his party last night. And I've got to say, it was a very enjoyable party. And Mr. Boswell was having a ball. So much so he hasn't turned up today for the recording, which he asked us to do today, because he knew he was partying last night. But he's not here. But the rest of the gang are here. So let's get them in here without any further ado. Up there in Clickmannanshire, we've got our favourite lawyer. It's Eva. Eva, how are you?
Hi, Roddy. Nice to see you again. It's been some week. Abbeyview, Dunfermline on Thursday, Coatbridge on Friday, and Clickmannanshire on Saturday. You can't back it.
It was a good wee session last night. I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Seems our Phil enjoyed it more than the rest of us. There you go. We're not surprised. And down in the borders, our Yvonne, she's come to join us.
Hi, Roddy. Congratulations on the sponsorship. That's great news. I will be on my best behaviour. I'm going to channel my inner Shirley Temple.
No, we don't want that. We prefer your Morticia Adams. That's a better one. Channel that one. That's much better. And there over in Edinburgh, our Lloyd.
Hi, Roddy.
How are you doing, Mr. Quinnan? Nice to see you. Nice.
Yeah, I'm well.
Good. It's been a heck of a week, folks, as always. And we were hoping that there might have been something else had happened, but while the rumours go on, there's been no action. But you never know. But what's happened, Eva, the first thing, we've had another resignation, and rumours abound that there's another 2 or 3 on the way. Philippa Whitford this time. Techie, can you stick up that? Philippa's leaving. She's retiring, she said. I wonder if she means just retiring from Westminster, or she's going to retire completely from politics. Though she says, I think it's great. She's now that she's left politics, front line, she's going to have more time to campaign for independence. Can you explain that one to me, Eva?
No, can't. Because I know that Philippa Whitford's retiring, and certainly she's given many years' service at Westminster, and she is, without being impolite, of an age to retire. But many of us are. And I cannot understand why ceasing to be an MP elected to achieve independence thereby gives you more time to campaign for independence. That seems to me to be a non sequitur. I also wonder what the headline means when it says that yesers should be voting for independence. Does that mean that Philippa supports the Scotland United campaign, or does it mean that Philippa continues to support an SNP-only campaign? I would like to see some answers to that soon rather than later, because when we were in Dunfermline the other night in Abbeyview, we were abundantly clear that everybody in the audience wants to see Scotland United, because it's understood that that is the way to mobilise the majority for independence. And that way we've got a greater chance of getting a majority of the popular vote and a majority of seats at Westminster. And that those two aspects on their own authorise and legitimise a demand for a negotiated independence settlement. A majority of seats, which is not based on a majority of the popular vote, will not achieve that. And at the moment, given that the SNP are in the low 30s in the polls and independence is at least the 50% mark, the only way forward to achieve independence is to go with the Scottish United ticket and have one pro-independence candidate per constituency. Pro-independence candidates competing with each other is not the way to achieve what is supposed to be our common goal. So hopefully what Philippa means is, let's have a concerted yes campaign, which is actually one of unity, where Scotland United is exactly what we're aiming for.
Yep, Scotland United is the only way forward. I'm sorry Phil's not here, Lloyd, because he always told me in private conversations that Philippa Whitford was the smartest of all the MPs that he worked with down there in Westminster. Not only did she have a grasp of her own brief, which the first was, of course, health the first time, but all the briefs she had an absolute grip. But everyone else did as well. She was actually highly intelligent. But again, it's another one who sort of faded into the background and got swallowed up by Westminster and didn't, it seemed, for the rest of us, reach her full potential.
I think it certainly looks that way, Roddy. I think to some degree, she was swallowed up by the SNP, not just Westminster. I think she probably understood that with her expertise, if we'd had been operating tactically and strategically correctly, then after she'd won her seat for Westminster in 2015, they should have moved mountains to make sure that she was then available to stand for the Scottish Parliament seat so that she could go directly into the health ministry, the area where she had real expertise, in the same way as they should have moved heaven and earth to get Joanna Cherry back up the road into Holyrood in 2016 so she could take over justice. The things you would do if you had a plan for independence. You would put the people with the expertise in the place where they can apply it. I believe that a lot of people who were elected and surprised by their election in 2015 believed that the leadership of the party were the fountains of all knowledge, and that they, as new people, as amateurs as they would see themselves, that they had to follow the instructions and behaviour of the leadership, and that the leadership knew better than them. And I think maybe she's being kind by saying, I'm just stepping back, that she came to realise that in actual fact the leadership didn't have quite the grasp on matters that she believed they did have. I think it's a loss. I think it was very unfortunate that she got herself dragged in on the wrong side of the GRR reform. I don't really believe that she does believe the nonsense that comes from trans rights activists. But in the end, this is just sad. Here we have someone of great competence who is effectively leaving the frontline political stage. I think there's no real sense to what's been spun in the National. And I think effectively and simply, it's a loss to the national movement if she drops out of politics completely.
Yeah, it is. Here we have, Yvonne, almost when you throw in Angus and Neil and Kenny, the SNP have lost up to 20% of the people that went down there after the last election in 2019. Now, these people all jumping ship at this moment. If we're so close to independence, why would you jump ship if you believe that your party is going to lead you to independence? Why would you not stay in for the final fight? You're on mute.
I suspect that's a rhetorical question.
It is.
Because we know that they're further away from independence from when the first day they walked into Parliament. But I've heard Phil speak in a very admiring way of Philippa Whitford, and she is an intellectual giant in a house full of mindless masses, which is the House of Commons. She's blocked me. I've got no idea why. I don't think that we've ever encountered each other. But maybe she's hinting that she'll leave Westminster but hope to go straight into Holyrood. And I have a feeling that a few of those who were involved in this, in resigning, are secretly harbouring ambitions to go straight from Westminster into Holyrood.
Yeah, that's a worry.
Well, it is a worry because they did Sweet FA down in London, and I doubt that they're going to do that much up in Edinburgh, except think that they've just jumped from one gravy train to another.
Yeah, as we say in this programme every week, with every one of us, Scotland United is the only way that can save the SNP, and because at this time it will go back the way we will regress if we don't unite as one. That's just a fact, Eva. And what we're also hearing is that there's rumours that they're going to expel Angus because he's refused to take the whip. Now, another man who's devoted his entire life, his entire political life, he has fought for independence, and they want to expel him. It's mind-boggling.
What's perhaps most disappointing out of this entire episode is that the policies that Angus Brendan McNeill has been proposing for the last few years are now becoming more popular within the SNP. So it's most ironic that when some in that party are starting to see the light that Angus saw a while ago, they're somehow trying to kick him out. It's utterly ridiculous. It does nothing for the party's reputation, and it does less than nothing for the independence movement as a whole, because beyond confines of the SNP membership, obviously there's a much wider movement of people who believe in the spirit of independence and in that as a great principle. And all of those within that movement that we know agree with Angus Brendan McNeill that we need to have multiple facets to our strategy. You don't put all your eggs in one basket, and you do all you can to expedite the electoral event where people can vote and legitimise our desire for independence. And really, that's all that Angus has been saying is SNP leadership, get the finger out and take action that reflects the aspirations of the grassroots of the party and the grassroots of the entire movement. You know, we the people want action. That's why people come to our equality events. It's why they go to the Alba book events. It's why they sign petitions online. It's why they complain and they moan and they phone into the radio to vent their spleen. They watch programmes like this. They watch Alex Ann's programme, because there is not only an appetite for independence, which is overwhelming at times, there is a determination and an anger because things are either not happening at all or not happening quickly enough. You know, we've got the spectacle almost daily of Humza Yousaf wringing his hand late and finding some money down the back of the couch to create a different sticking plaster. A memorable one just the other day was to do with the housing crisis. We know that the numbers of homeless and the numbers of people that are waiting to be rehoused are increasing almost exponentially. Rents in some places actually, despite controls, becoming out of control. A ground floor, one flat in a block of 4, flat, 2 bedrooms, now has a rent in the west of Scotland of £950 a month. That's an ex-local authority flat. That's what landlords are making out of this. It is impossible for people to go on the housing ladder. And we have a survey of affordable accommodation for rent from councils and from housing associations. We know where that started. We also know that in recent years, particularly with Alec Neil and Alex Salmond, we had houses that were being built more frequently in Scotland than anywhere else in the UK. But we've not kept that momentum up. So Humza Yousaf's sticking plaster for that this week was not a national house building corporation. It was not a national house building drive. It was provision of £60 million for local authorities to bid for, to enable them to buy houses off the open market from, obviously, public or private ownership. And that's a sticking plaster. And what Scotland needs now is not a sticking plaster where there's a hemorrhage. Scotland needs radical action, including independence, but also policies that are designed to have an immediate but long-lasting impact on the prospects of the people of this country. And housing is such a basic need, and really a basic right, that even that the Scots have got to get right. And we won't do that completely and properly until we're independent, but we need to be heading in the direction of taking control, taking decisions and implementing decisions that are life-changing for people, not more of this in limbo where folk are saying to each other, well, what's the point in voting, because they're all the same. Let's make a difference. And we make a difference by being like Angus Brendan McNeill and saying, get out there and fight and campaign and do everything you can. Screen every second, not keep sticking it to the back burner and having a wee bit lip service now and again, a wee photo shoot with a leaflet in your hand, which is what Hamza Yousaf was doing today in Dundee, but it's not bringing independence any closer.
Yeah, but it's a fact we should be building houses, because if you go back to the recession in the 30s, or the Depression rather, it was the Hoover Dam, the building of that started everything. The same in the house. It's not just creating houses for the homeless, but you then got job for brickies and plumbers and electricians and all the stuff that comes off of that. And so infrastructure investment is probably the best way to get the economy going and get people out of poverty. But the other thing, just to keeping on the political side of things, Lloyd, one of the things about the SNP party, I keep slipping up that way, that was always good was the unity. You know, it was a Scotland United party. It was always united. It always had discipline. We didn't have much, you know, apart from the 79 group, there wasn't much dissent. And here's Fergus Ewing talking about not supporting the government if they don't keep their promise about dualling the A9. Again, an infrastructure project that would create jobs as well as create safety, etc., etc. It's a bad day when you've got a Ewing threatening not to back the SNP government.
Absolutely, but to be perfectly honest with you, when I heard what Fergus was saying, I thought there would be a sensible response, and the response we got from the Minister, Mary McCallan, was that the dualling of the A9 is the most complicated engineering infrastructure project in the history of the country, which is frankly drivel. It really is. It was insulting to the Inverness Courier that had put on the event. It was insulting to the people who were in the room, and it was insulting to the people of this country. You know, the Queen's Ferry crossing, the Aberdeen Peripheral Road, the finishing of the M74. All of these are much, much bigger projects than the dualling of the A9. There's no question about it. But the fact that we're even discussing at this late time the idea that the A9 will not be dualled until beyond 2025 is frankly ridiculous. It really is, and it shows the lack of priority, the absolute lack of priority we have in the current government. They seem to think responding to headlines is the only thing to do. They think that getting a headline is policy. They haven't sat down like sensible people and said, right, what effectively is wrong in our country? Our roads are bad, particularly the A9. We have a shortage of housing. Our ferries are not working. We have a major problem with rural housing and the effect it has on the economy because people who take up jobs cannot find somewhere to stay. These are priorities. These are things that need fixed and need fixed immediately. But we seem to be in this bubble world where politicians of the SNP are only talking to themselves and their civil servants and then giving edicts to the world. And hence, Fergus Ewing believes that the only way he can get action, true action from this government, is by threat. It's an absurd situation to be in. Do the ministers talk to the backbenchers? Do the backbenchers get to talk to the ministers? Who is making policy at the moment? I mean, for my money, it's the civil servants. And that's why we're in this terrible situation where you have Fergus Ewing threatening the party and the party threatening Angus Brendan McNeill. This is not unity of any kind whatsoever. It's bad for the country. It's bad for the party. and they need to get it fixed. It's a sad situation, but it needs to be fixed. And the only way that's going to happen is if Hamza sits down with the backbenchers and explains what he's doing, and they explain back what they want. But as far as the A9 and Fergus is concerned, they need to get it done. People die on that road, and that's wrong.
Yeah, on that, I recently had a conversation with Alex Hammond. I love name dropping, makes me feel important. I had a conversation with him. When he left office in 2014, he had left a plan in place. Everything was in place to do the dualling of the A9. It's not as if they've got to go and reinvent the wheel. It's there. Go and find it. And all you got to do is have the political will to do it, Yvonne. And that's the problem. They don't have the political will to do these things. They're more interested in doing, as Lloyd's alluded to, these, like, dare I say, GRR, etc., rather than get back to basics, infrastructure, jobs, housing, all the stuff that we need to make people's lives better.
Because bits of kids like Mary McCallan have got no idea of the history or the background of Scots over the centuries. Some of the greatest engineering feats have been created by Scottish engineers. And to turn around and say, well, it's very complex. How insulting is that to the people of Scotland? It's not even a motorway, it's a dual carriageway. It's desperately needed. Too many people are dying on that road. I think our entire conference drove up that road to get to Inverness, and many of us had a tale of near misses and incidents that they'd seen and driven past, and that road is dangerous. And there's nothing complex about it. It needs widening. It needs dualling. And if anybody can do it, Scottish people can. It's because of intellectual pygmies like her that people are told, that people don't have the confidence to vote for independence, because we're told constantly by people like her, oh, we can't do that. Oh, it's very complex. It's very complicated. Well, balderdash to all of that. There's nothing complicated about a dual carriageway, about a road. It's let's just get it done. It's issues like that that will cost the SNP dearly in the ballot box.
Yep, it will. And talking of getting hot in the ballot box, Eva, the Labour Party, Sir Keir Starmer, or as he's now affectionately known, Sir Kiddy Starver, who's refusing point blank to get rid of the child two-cap policy, or the rape clause, as we more affectionately call it, and saying that there's no money to do it. That's just, this is 2 weeks ago it was their policy, now it's changed. They flip and flop. For those people out there who are getting ready to thinking about voting Labour because they can help get rid of the Tories and they don't like the SNP, they ain't going to see any difference, are they?
Well, this is really a dirty little dispute between dirty little politicians who have little, if anything, in the way of principle. The two-child cap, for those who don't recall exactly what it is a cap introduced by the Tories whereby families would be paid child benefit for only the first two children unless able to prove that other children in the family were born as the result of rape. And it was Labour policy to get rid of that two-child cap. And it was only last weekend that Sir Keir Starmer said he changed his mind to that any longer. So it's still the official policy that they'll ditch it, but actually we've now been told that for the purposes of fighting the next general election, it's no longer a matter of principle, it's something that will need to be reconsidered and reviewed. And that has annoyed considerable swathes of Labour Party activists, especially in Scotland, where several elected Labour women have spoken against this, again wringing their hands and demanding that this not happen, and that Anna Sarwar stand up and speak up, and that Sir Keir Starmer listens to people who know about poverty and who say that the two-child cap actually exacerbates child and family poverty and it's regressive as opposed to progressive. But the difficulty for Keir Starmer is he needs to win back the red wall in England. And it's very easy to tackle people who are described as scoungers, welfare or on benefits. Sorry, I've got an audience in the background. Because there are a lot of voters that Sir Keir might attract who like the fact of a clampdown on what they consider to be ill-deserving recipients of welfare. So what Sir Keir will have to do is to be two-faced and have a face in England and a different one in Scotland, because his audience he wants to attract and the supporters that he wants to attract really can't have it all ways. He can't have it all ways, but he's not the man of principle that we thought or we were introduced to originally. Anna Sarwar has said is he might press Keir Starmer to scrap the limit because it exacerbates poverty. That needs to change. But an incoming Labour government will inherit economic carnage. And that means we cannot do everything we want and we can't do everything as fast as we want. But we will press incoming UK Labour government to move as fast as they can within our fiscal rules to remove this heinous policy. Now, the band played Believe It If You Like, I think is the phrase. And there's an easy way around this. Independence. Because with independence, we're not constrained by a Westminster budget any longer. We've got our own and we set our own priorities. So it's a difficulty for Labour. What it reinforces is that there is no such thing as the Scottish Labour Party. Labour in Scotland will do what Labour in Westminster decide they will do, because their views and their attitudes and their aspirations are entirely irrelevant once Keir Starmer thinks that the Prime Ministerial position is within his grasp.
Yeah, we discussed this last week and said there was an edict that came out from Labour headquarters for all policy and all statements have to come from London, not from Cardiff or Edinburgh. You're absolutely right. While Sir Keir Starmer was talking about, keeping the two-child cap, Lloyd, Rachel Reeves, the shadow Chancellor, came out to back him up to say, yeah, there's no money. This was in the same day as it was announced that our King was to get a 45% pay rise to help pay for his growing expenses. It really is quite obscene. It was also in the same day as they announced that they're sending more weapons, millions and billions of weapons to Ukraine, but they can't help people with more than 2 children. Priorities are all upside down for me.
It's ideological choices. But I think what was deeply worrying is this is the Shadow Chancellor who believes that the money's run out, when in actual fact, she can order the Bank of England to print more money tomorrow.
Correct.
If someone who has this level of economic illiteracy should not be the potential Chancellor of the Exchequer, but in actual fact, we all know she's not that illiterate. This is a cover-up for an ideology. This is an ideological statement by the Labour Party that they have now decided that that people who have more than 2 children should take the responsibility themselves, and the state no longer has any responsibility whatsoever. Now, you can't come out and say that directly, so to hide it behind the economic illiteracy of there's no money left is insulting, but it's also indicative of what I would term a middle-class authoritarianism that is absolutely rife in the leadership of the Labour Party, both in England and in Scotland. It's awash with people who would not know poverty if it was jumping up and down on the bridge of their nose. They can make the statements, they can make the smart comments about how bad things are, how unfortunate things are, but ultimately the answer to that is there's no money to deal with it. These people have no moral compass. This is about power. And for a long, long time, we've known this. The Labour Party will convince itself that they will go into government and they will do better than the Tories. But that's the product of the bubble that they live in. Every single Labour government, with the exception, in my lifetime, with the exception of Wilson's second government, has been an utter and complete failure for the working people of this country. And it's going to happen again, because the Labour Party is not the party of Labour. It is not the party of the people. It's the party of what would have been termed the middle-class liberals of the mid-60s. That's the reality of it. Its ideology is liberal, and liberal ideology is one ratchet notch away from conservatism. Yeah.
What they're trying to do here, Yvonne, is they're trying to con the people. Tories are every bit as guilty of it. Is that, running a country and a budget is just like running your house. If you overspend your salary and your overdraft goes, well, there's no more money. But as Lloyd's alluded to, that's just not the case. Governments can print as much bloody money as they like. They can create it at the click of a finger. And it's quite insulting to the people to suggest that it's like a household budget and you have to stay within it.
Yeah, I mean, one of the best chancellors that we never had was John McDonnell, Jeremy Corbyn's sidekick. Labour is supposed to be the party that gives hope and inspiration, a party of socialism. And for Rachel Reeves to stand there and say, well, there's no money, every voter is going to see through that, and they're going to realise that she is going to bring this up every time a trade union puts its hands out for a pay rise, every time a new road is needed to be built, every time they need housing, new hospitals. She's just going to stand there and she's going to do exactly what the SNP does. The SNP reverts to, oh, well, it's Westminster's fault. We can't do anything. And she's just going to stand there and say, well, there's no money. The Tories spent it all.
Yeah.
Well, we don't want problems. We want solutions. And standing there and saying, well, we can't do it because we haven't got the money. What sort of inspiration is that going to give any potential Labour voter? And quite frankly, Labour didn't perform that well in the Tory by-elections.
No, it doesn't.
They lost to Uxbridge. They didn't put on that many votes. What happened was Tory voters just stayed at home.
Yeah.
Tory voters don't switch allegiances, these swivel-eyed loons, as David Cameron used to call them. If they don't like what they see, they just stay at home and they don't vote.
But that's exactly what's going to happen with SNP voters. Independence voters are going to stay at home. They're not going to vote Labour. Labour might get 1 seat in Scotland, but it's going to be because, as in 2017, our voters will stay at home.
Well, this is one of the dangers. But again, Anas Sarwar isn't really inspiring anybody about, he isn't making any promises about what he's going to do in a dynamic new Scotland. He's taking his orders from London. And Keir Starmer does not have his finger on the pulse of the working classes. They can't stand him. He's just not an inspiration at all. Yeah, look at that graphic. Spot the difference.
There is no difference, is there?
Well, there is absolutely no difference at all. As my old friend George Galloway used to say, two cheeks of the same ass. You know,
Yeah, well, that's exactly. Yep, absolutely. That's exactly that. Two cheeks of the same arse. And you know what that makes the Liberals. They're the bit in the middle.
Well, the Lib Dems are just the walking sphincters. I mean, they really are.
Oh, that's very Shirley Temple. Very Shirley Temple.
Well, you know, if we're going to go into the gutter, I suppose. But really, you know, we're told that we get the politicians that we deserve. Well, my God, I don't know what we've done to deserve the rabble that is in place. But what is interesting, people are becoming more emboldened, certainly in England. And Starmer has turned round and expelled people left, right, and centre from the party, thinking, you know, that's the end of them. But what he's done is he's emboldened them and empowered them to stand as independents. And as we saw last weekend in the Berlin ward in East London, they did very well. They took over 40% of the votes. And I think that this is going to happen again. He was boasting that he was getting rid of the last Corbynista in North Tyneside, just over the border. I can't remember the guy's name. It'll come back to me. And he's standing as an independent. And he raised £100,000 for his fighting fund in a few days because Labour voters are incensed that Starmer has said, oh, I'm not having him standing as the mayor of North Tyneside. No, get rid of him and put in one of my people. Voters in the northeast aren't going to wear it. The red wall, which is now the blue wall, I don't think it's going to collapse in the way that people expected. And if Starmer continues on this trajectory of being a turn-off to the socialist vote, I think he's in for a big surprise. But I don't think that the Tories will cash in either. I think we'll see more growth of independence parties.
Yeah, I agree with you. There's no difference. I keep saying that to people on social media. Okay, so you get rid of the Tories, what are you going to do? Put in Labour? There is no difference, as we've just shown. They're absolutely, you couldn't put a flag paper between them. Eva, I mean, while they're saying, you know, there's no money, and we know that's a load of nonsense, they'll still find money to renew Trident. They're still finding money to give a 45% rise to the king. They'll still find money for weapons for Ukraine. They'll still find money for their pet projects. So there is no difference. But ideologically, there's no difference either between Tory and Labour anymore, is there?
There hasn't been any real difference between them for a very long time. And I think that Scotland woke up to that fact, certainly in 1415. And, you know, most people in Scotland favour a left-wing socialist or social democrat type government, and the only way to achieve that is with independence. Now, I read a really good article during the week written by Robin McAlpine. He's always readable and in fact unmissable.
Absolutely.
The title of this one is "Poverty is not something you fix, it's something you prevent." The only way that we can prevent poverty in Scotland is by being independent, so that we're not bound or the City of London or the corporate or lobbying interests that there are around Westminster and all the, you know, corrupt practices that we're pretty confident have gone on there forever and will continue so to do. So to achieve that independence, we need all the thinkers to persuade the leaders and the activists and the people that really count to persuade the leaders of all independent supporting parties that we can only tackle the ills of the country and eradicate the ills of the country with a concerted, united campaign towards independence. You know, gone should be the days when we worry about what Westminster do with our money. We should be sitting with our money, in Scotland. We shouldn't be saying, the king was in his counting house counting all his money, because the king is sitting counting money, but it's our money. We should be sitting in a Scottish Republic saying, well, all that revenue that used to fire south, whether it was out of the North Sea or whisky or forestry or seafood or whatever the hell it was, doesn't go south anymore. It stays in Scotland for the good of the people of Scotland. And we would want to be sitting in 10 or 15 years from now and saying, there's nobody homeless in Scotland. There's nobody hungry in Scotland. There's nobody cold in Scotland. Scottish children, Scottish students can go to Europe again. They can travel there by ferries directly from the east coast of Scotland. They can go and study at colleges and universities in Europe. They can go and spend 3 months interrailing around Europe. The world has become our oyster again. The world stopped and Scotland got back on again in the general election in 2024 because we had a Scotland United campaign and we sent the rest of them homewards to Westminster to think again because we took our power back. That's the vision that we need, and we get that with radical action and pressure upon the leaders who have got to realise that it's now or never.
I agree. So these by-elections, we're going to come on to them, Lloyd, this week. They were interesting, and as Yvonne's alluded to, they weren't I mean, there was great results as such for the Labour Party, but not as good as they should have been. But immediately after it, Rishi Sunak turned around and said, well, the old lessons have been learned. He's now going to get tougher on migrants. I don't know how you can, than what they're doing. They're going to get tough on trans. And what was the other one? They're going to get onto the unemployed. They're going to hit all the old favourite Tory buttons to get these Tory voters back out voting. Attack the unemployed, attack the immigrants. It's just more of the same filthy right-wing politics that they think can get them back in. And isn't it quite concerning that is actually what triggers a lot of the English voters?
Yeah, I mean, that's a problem, Roddy. There's no question about it. But I tend to spend less time than most people involved in politics paying very much attention to what happens in our surly neighbour's backyard. I'm more interested in what Rachel Reeves said. Rachel Reeves said there's no more money. That means a cap on the budget for the Scottish Parliament. Because remember, the only organisation, the only political structure in this country which has to balance the books is the Scottish Parliament. And effectively, what Rachel Reeves has said is, you're getting no more money. Now, if that is not the spur for Scotland United, if that's not the whip hand straight to the SNP to fight back against any potential Labour government by saying, well, they've told us already, we're getting no more money, now's the time to strike out for independence. But do we have the strategists who can do that? I don't know. But looking at it, I think that my big take from the three by-elections was, as Yvonne has said, Tories stay at home, they don't jump, especially South East Tories. That explains why the Tories held Uxbridge. Somerset is natural liberal country. I mean, for most of my life, that area of the country was liberal. And there's been movement of population in that area. So the Liberals went in there. That's no surprise. There's nothing special in that. And they'll do nothing with it, as they always do. Whereas the Yorkshire seat was a bit different. And I think the choice of candidate meant, for the first time, Tory voters were able to go out and vote Labour. Because when I heard that young man explaining his philosophy, which is clearly straight from the Sir Keith Joseph brand of politics, horrifying for a 25-year-old man to have the views that he does have, but that explained to me, and this seems to be the strategy. The Labour strategy is to put Tories into the seats to take them from the Tories. It seems that the Tory party approach is they've used these three by-elections to let the Labour Party show them what their tactics are for the general election coming next year. And what is made clear to Rishi is that their ideological commitment to the Stonewall agenda of gender recognition is going to be the main point of attack. And this is where it becomes important for us, because that means that's going to be the main form of attack on the SNP and on Labour in Scotland. And the Labour and the SNP in Scotland are effectively going to be boxed into a corner in the British election by the Tories for sharing the same ideology. Now, that, for us, for the national movement, is an absolute disaster. And I say this, if we are to have Scotland united, it has to be on a platform that cannot be defeated on a single ideological principle by either Labour or the Tories. And currently, how could we go in to a Scotland United approach in the general election next year with the ideologically captured leadership of the Scottish National Party, who support this issue, which is going to be the main line of attack from the current government? How are we going to do that without serious change? We need to get change in the SNP. They have to recognise they need to get some political smarts. They now know, from what Sunak has said, trans rights and the issue of the depriving of women of their rights is going to be a major line of attack. If the SNP doesn't move off that ground and move off it rapidly, they're going to suffer even more, because we've been talking for weeks now about, and I know for a fact, working people will not go out and vote for the Scottish National Party unless it's on a Scotland United ticket. When they now come under attack for something, for a clear policy of their own, that is going to drive more voters away from them. They have to realise that this is an electoral liability, and it's not an electoral liability for the SNP alone. It's an electoral liability for the cause of independence, and they have a responsibility to the cause of independence. They must get back on the big bus, and the big bus is called Scotland United.
You're absolutely right. I was speaking to someone from the Sinn Féin party who was telling me that now they're getting worried that Sinn Féin, for years they were already going to be the next government in Ireland, but now not going to happen. It doesn't look like Fianna Fáil are making a comeback because of the trans issue. They're going to attack Sinn Féin on that. And because what you forget, well, the Catholic Church isn't the dominant force it was in Ireland. Ireland's still a conservative Catholic country at heart, steep with a small c. And this trans issue is going to, it could see undo Sinn Féin's march to glory. It's quite worrying throughout the Western world. Yvonne, talking on those politics and that young man that Lloyd mentioned, I just got his details. I took note of it. He's 25 years of age. He was privately educated. This is a Labour candidate, folks. Labour. Privately educated 25-year-old who then went on to Oxford to study politics and then interned for Wed Streeting, and is now going straight in to become a member of Parliament. If ever anything said carpetbagger and careerist, this is it. And go back to one of Lloyd's favourite phrases. There is no political core in this young man. This is all about a career. Dare I say, Murray Black type?
Well, quite. He's the already nicknamed the baby of the house because he's the youngest serving MP in 2023. His mother said she's been a driving force behind him, and good luck to him. But you know, he's got no lived experience. You put him next to somebody like Eva's Roadshow. You put him next to somebody like Leanne Turvitt, who is a giant in lived experience. And she's drawn on the hardship that she's been surrounded by. And she's able to stand up and engage with people and talk about poverty and suffering from her own lived experience. What's this spotty little oik going to do? You know, 25 years old, he's never seen an angry man in his life. He has the integrity and fragrance of an open-air toilet in Haig after the rugby sevens. I mean, he's just, you know, what is it's pointless. And the scary thing is, Roddy, if you look at all of the wannabes in the SNP who are lining themselves up for the vacant Westminster seats, they'll all have the same profile. They'll all have done politics and philosophy at Oxford University or a similar university. They're privileged, white, elite kids with no lived experience, never suffered from poverty, have no idea what poverty is, have no idea about the working classes, gosh, it's just so depressing. We need more people like Leanne Turvitt on board, and I think she's speaking again. We're sharing a platform in is it Glen
Rothes.
Sorry, Glen Rothes. And I'm really looking forward to it because as long as I've been in politics, she, I can learn so much more from her and already have. So the Scotland United message is so important that we get it out there. And we should, for those of you who didn't see Winnie Ewan's memorial, please go on to, I think it's Scottish Independence, and watch the channel because it's on YouTube. And that was Scotland United. And, when you looked at the characters that came together in Inverness Cathedral, the atmosphere, you must have been able to cut it with a knife. But we got a masterclass of what Scotland United is with the Alapa leader, Alex Salmond. There, sitting right in front of him, was Humza Yousaf, the FM that he had mentored, and sitting right behind him, right behind Alex, was Chief Mummy, Nicola Sturgeon.
Yeah, which allows me to do this because this was a classic moment from it, if I may. If I can get it. Actually, I should take it to do that because I make a mess of it. I pressed it the wrong one.
All of this made
Is that it?
Winnie Ewan the most significant Scottish nationalist of the 20th century. Winnie never held office, but you don't have to hold high office to achieve something, just as you can hold office and achieve nothing.
Yeah. I mean, that was, in fencing terms, well, I don't know whether it is a fencing term or not, he skewered Sturgeon in half a sentence. But having said that, he also gave a masterclass in Scotland United. There was this awkward moment, or it could have been awkward, when Humza Yousaf turned round and there's Alex right in front of him. And what did Alex do? He extended the hand of friendship. And I wish I'd know, what they were talking about, but there was an exchange and it seemed friendly and productive. That's Scotland United. Those two guys probably didn't want to shake each other's hands, but there's certain behaviour that's required in certain areas. And to his credit, Alex Salmond led the initiative and shook his hand. And Chief Mummy just put her head down. And when she left the cathedral, she must have been like Usain Bolt going down that aisle, because I didn't see her after that. But as I say, Alex Salmond gave a masterclass in what Scotland United is. and there were such a diverse congregation, it could have ended up with fists flying, but it didn't. It was dignified. It was just a wonderful tribute to a great lady who would have endorsed and approved Scotland United very much.
For sure she would have. Absolutely she would have. Going back to Eva, to what Lloyd was saying about the trans issue could be really crucial in this coming election and could scupper our movement. We decided not to show this video, folks. It's out there, you can get it. The one where the trans guy who has volunteered to get the first cervix transplant so he can get pregnant and then abort the baby because he wants to go down as the first. Now, if people can't see that that's a sick ideology, then I don't want to be in this world.
The real controversial issue about gender recognition reform is the self-ID aspect, because in general terms in Scotland we're pretty tolerant. That yes, there are areas of concern, but most people really could give a damn how other people live privately or how they express themselves publicly, as long as they're not doing any harm or causing unnecessary events that might comprise hatred. But the issue with self-identification, we know absolutely, fundamentally, beyond any shadow of a doubt, jeopardises safeguarding, pure and simple. And we shouldn't talk in terms of trans people being discriminated against because there's some issue around their chosen gender. We talk about gender reassignment as a characteristic because it is. But if you choose to reassign your gender, it does not mean that you've actually been able to change your sex. So the poor deluded person that you referred to there, Roddy, is quite clearly unwell and ought not to be pandered to. And that issue is slightly different in content and in tone and in direction from the whole gender recognition reform debate. But the problem politically in Scotland is, as was alluded to earlier, the gender recognition reform has become so toxic that it has damaged the entire standing of the independence movement. And if independence is the priority, then what Hamza Yousaf ought to do is take independent legal advice, and I suspect that that advice now would be that the prospects of his challenge succeeding are so narrow legally, and the risks that it attracts and has attracted politically are so enormous that the challenge should be dropped. And if that challenge was dropped and the bill was enacted as an act and it did not become law, we can have Scotland United, we can get our independence, and then if a debate on rights of trans-identified people is required, then let us have that debate in an open and honest and dignified fashion where we're talking about the topic in hand and we are not finding people having their arms twisted up behind their backs to vote for something that they don't believe in or agree with, simply to carry on the pretense that the SNP is a party that's united when the whole world knows that the truth is quite the opposite. So we're on a slippery slope when we equate the individual that you mentioned, Roddy, with trans people generally. That's not what the debate is about. The debate is about looking after everybody and having safeguards in place because we know that those and we know, for example, single-sex spaces are necessary and desirable for all the reasons that we've enumerated before. And this poor fellow that you talk about, he can't change his sex no matter what he ever does. He'll never be female. And all the macabre things that he thinks about doing are matters that should never have seen the light of day, let alone be reported on. But it goes to show just how far we've sunk, that something like this is almost commonplace. It's just the next development for people to speak about. And it's actually, in many respects, become unspeakable.
We're coming towards the end of the show here, Lloyd. There's a couple of things that come out this week that again underwrite why we must get united, Scotland united. We must get independence. The UK is going down, or really going down a toilet. And one of them was, I don't know if you saw the article. There was about 20% of a whole load of people. 1 in 10 people admitting they're doing their own dentistry, trying to pull their own teeth because they can't either get a dentist or they can't afford the dentist. I just find it. And another one we've got is where every day there's 172 people a day being evicted because of poverty. And we're meant to be the 6th richest country in the world, which shows that someone's making money. We can give 45% pay rises to our king, but we're throwing people out on the street. The UK's going down the toilet, is it not?
Well, yeah, and it has been for quite a while. It just won't admit it at the moment. It's clinging on to that U-bend like crazy. But in terms of the evictions, one of the proud achievements of Alex's government was the instruction to avoid evictions. We don't have evictions anywhere near the same level that they have in England. Again, it's partly to do with the law enacted by us and partly to do with our separate legal system. But the whole concept, well, also in the issue of dentists, we have a major problem with dentists, and it's all about strategic planning. How long does it take to train a dentist? It takes 5 to 7 years. Now, you know, the fact that the current Labour Party leader in Scotland is a dentist, that's a loss to our service. This should have been planned for a long time ago, and I'm sure it would have been had the previous First Minister had stayed in position. This is what real governance is about. It's about looking to the future. It's not about tomorrow's headlines. It's not about responding to this morning's headlines. It's about having the gumption and the gravitas to see that governance, true governance, is about what you do today and how it affects 5 years down the line. Now, the issue of dentistry and the issue of provision of service is going to come under real pressure in Scotland because we've got a failed census. The census is the basis upon which you can do your future and forward planning. And we have a census that's not fit for publication. Now, that aside, we need strategic thinking. We're short of nurses. We're short of doctors. We're short of dentists. We're short of paediatricians. We're short in an awful lot of areas. But what you have to do is put a plan in to make sure that shortfall is taken up, rather than the scrabbling around that's going on at the moment, seeking special visas so that we can bring in particularly healthcare professionals from Commonwealth countries. Now, that's not strategic planning. This is all a problem of the culture in British politics, which is you respond to the daily crisis rather than planning for the future.
Absolutely. Coming to the end, Yvonne, now, I'm just wondering if you had any idea you could throw some light on this. I have a problem. Charlotte Owen, who's a big 6 foot, very attractive blonde lady with legs up to her armpits that worked for Boris Johnson, has been given a life peerage. She was an intern. Any ideas why Boris would give a 6 foot tall, blonde, attractive woman with legs up to her armpits a peerage? She's not actually really seems to have done much.
Well, it's like Mrs. Merton asking the question, why did you marry, what attracted you to this multi-millionaire? You know, there's no happy ending in Westminster politics. You've got more chance of seeing a happy ending in a Thai massage parlour in Blythswood Square. Really, there's...
I'm glad you brought your Shirley Temple today, not anything worse.
Well, I mean, you're the one who brought the subject up.
Yes, I did. I'm naughty, haven't I?
When it comes to Westminster politics, there are no happy endings. It's just more grind, more misery, more hardship, more poverty. And in Scotland, we got so close to the Holy Grail, and we can get there again if we just go for Scotland United. And I would appeal to every SNP branch out there. We need your support. This is another golden opportunity, just like the vote SNP 1, vote Alipa 2 scenario. This is another great opportunity to get us closer to the motherlode, which is independence. And the only way we can get it at the moment is Scotland United. And those lot in London will do everything in their power to cause friction and upset and mischief making. And we have to rise above them and just look back in history. And Scotland's greatest moments came, greatest victories came when people were united. And the last All Under One Banner March was at Bannockburn. And again, looking back into the history books, Bannockburn was an amazing military victory that was brought about when the common man came together fighting, not the posh buggers on horseback. It was the infantry that came together and won Bannockburn for us. And it's really, to all the foot soldiers out there today in the SNP, for God's sake, think Scotland United and support us. And when I say us, I'm talking about the independence movement. It doesn't matter who you are, where you're from, which football team you supported. None of that matters. Just one thing, and that's Scotland United. And let's get this independence and cut away from those charlatans that have looted and robbed this great nation.
Hear, hear. And to do that, you can start by turning up at Ayr next week, folks, for the All Under One Banner March. I say I'll be there. I think all the troops are going to be there as well. We're all going to be there.
Yep.
Yeah.
Everyone's going to be there. All except Phil. He might not have sobered up by then. He might be. I don't know. I don't know where he is going to be. But we'll be there, and I hope we'll see you there. But if we don't, until we see you again, please take care.
Through a Scottish Prism, the programme that is unapologetically pro-Scottish independence and anti-Westminster rule. Everything we say here is viewed through a Scottish prism. Brought to you by Barhead Boy.